How do you win your Social Security disability claim if you're filing for disability benefits? If you're currently receiving disability benefits, how to make sure you keep it? That we're talking about work CDRs, the continuing disability reviews, the medical CDRs. And we have a special guest today, Tara G. She was a former Social Security disability program expert. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining our team there. So Tarji is also doing appointments with us as well. So if you need help filing for disability, she is the go-to person. And let me explain. This is a perfect matchup here because I worked at the Social Security Administration. I ran the third business Social Security office in the country. I was also, before I became a manager, I was what's called a Title II CS, Title II of the Social Security Act. And those are the people that do retirement benefits, Medicare, spouse benefits, and Social Security disability insurance. So I've taken hundreds of thousands of disability claims. And then once we take the claim, check to make sure everything is there, person is insured and everything, and then we send it to DDS, Disability Determination Services. And that's where she worked. So a lot of people don't know that. They think once they send it to Social Security, then it's done. But the DDS is our state agencies, and they're the ones that make the medical determination. So when people file the disability claim, they go down to local Social Security office or they file it online, they push the button. Once the Social Security office is done with it, what do y'all start doing to it up there?
Yeah, so once the Social Security office does the technical review and it comes to DDS, we begin the medical review process. So that you typically know that process has started when you start getting forms in the mail, and you will get an intro letter that says we're the office that makes the decision based on Social Security. That letter usually includes a function report that you fill out to let Social Security know how your function is limited by your disability, and it often includes a work history report. While you're completing those documents, they are also requesting medical records from all of the medical sources and reviewing those records as they come in. Once those records are complete, if it's a complete record and they do not have to request any exams, I won't say that there is specific information that Social Security is looking for in your record, but if the record is not a complete record, missing any sort of information, Social Security may request an exam for you, a mental or physical exam, to get that complete information. Once the medical review is complete, then there is a vocational review that the examiner does to determine, considering your vocational factors, whether or not you can continue to work. And then that write-up is completed, a doctor signs it, and you get your decision. Before you get your decision, the federal quality review office may or may not review your claim because those reviews are random. So federal quality review can review your claim. If they get it, that may add some additional processing time, and if they okay it, then you get your decision in the mail.
Okay, so what part of the cog of that super large wheel were you part of? You worked in DDS and you also worked at other places. We want to give our regular viewers out there.
Yes, I was a part of the entire wheel. So it starts at the DDS, and what I mean by the entire wheel, there are different levels that a case, like the life of a claim. So it starts at the DDS. If your claim is allowed at the DDS, it may or may not be reviewed by quality, like I said, and then you get your decision. If your claim is denied by the DDS, you can do reconsideration. It'll go back to the DDS for another review. If it's denied again, you may or may not request a hearing and go before the ALJ. So my experience includes being the disability examiner, reviewing the cases at each of those decision levels. So at the initial level, at the reconsideration level, at the CDR level, child cases, anything that happened with that disability case, I was reviewing. Beyond that, I was a hearing officer at the Disability Determination Division, and that is when you've already been on disability, your claim has come up for review at CDR and you were denied at CDR. If you were denied at CDR, then you request a hearing, and that hearing is before an administrative hearing officer. And I was administrative hearing officer. Beyond the DDS, I worked at a federal quality review center, and I also worked at headquarters writing disability policy. So I have worked claims from beginning to end. I've also reviewed claims at the judicial level to ensure that the ALJs are following policy correctly. So,
Wow.
right.
Okay.
So from DDS to as far as a claim can go, I've reviewed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
So.
Let's what you talked about a lot, and we've got so this is also a live Q&A. So if you're joining us, if you're thinking about, you or someone you know are thinking about filing for disability benefits, we'll talk throughout the hour about all of it and answer all your questions. We'll talk about what the difference between SSI is and SSDI, and what a little bit more detail on the consultative exams and those CDR processes. She mentioned continuing disability reviews. That's how essentially they kick you off of disability benefits if they determine
Maybe
Social Security, or maybe not, right? Yes. Based on the work CDRs and the medical CDRs, continuing disability reviews. If you go back to work, then there are someone already threw something in there. Disability is a joke. Half of the disabled aren't. Time to clean house and get those criminals off the payroll and use that money for people who are truly disabled. Social Security is everybody that's ever filed for disability. There's a myth out there that everybody gets denied for disability the first time, and I've got that on my website that's not the fact. I'm sure you approved hundreds of thousands of claims the first time. I have as well. Do some people get better almost immediately and go back to work, or whatever the case may be? A lot of people don't understand that when you're receiving disability benefits, you are 100% allowed to work. And I've got that on my website. If you go to mygovexpert.com there and you click on the disability tab and you go into working and benefits, it tells you all about that you are allowed to work. Everybody wants you to go back to work. If you're able to go back to work, Congress has set up a bunch of work incentives for you to allow you to try to go back to work. It's called a trial work period. And then after that 9-month trial work period, then you've got your extended period of eligibility where you can work as long as you stay under a certain limit. So there's a lot of people out there that, well, my neighbor's, on Social Security disability and they're working. Well, they're allowed to work if they stay under a certain amount. If they go over that amount, then that's what triggers the whole work CDRs and all the rest of it. Do people scam the system? Yes. Do people scam credit cards and home loans and auto loans? And there's scammers out there. But it's very, very difficult, depending on your disability, to get disability. Some people are approved immediately. And I always say that's kind of a bittersweet thing, because if your disability is approved by a compassionate allowance almost immediately, then that means you unfortunately have a very, very, very serious disability. But it's a long, drawn out process. What are we looking about? When I used to take claims, at that time, we used to tell people you'll get a decision within 3 to 6 months. What are we looking at? You just got out of the agency this year, right?
I did. I just left the agency in March of this year. But as far as the time frame goes, I don't think that's an unreasonable time frame, but time frames are not hard lines in the sand, because there are so many factors that have to be considered in this process. When Social Security starts that review, the first thing they do is request records from the medical sources that you provided. If you happen to forget a medical source and we can see in that record that your doctor referred you to someone, we're going to get the records from the doctor that you were referred to. So all of that, you can't, and we also don't know how long it's going to take those records to come in. Now, there is a time frame. We give the doctors a time frame to return those records within, but depending on how important the record are, we may extend that time frame. We may make calls to the doctor's office to see if we get those records, because it would be really important to the decision. So those are factors that we can't necessarily account for upfront. So I don't think 3 to 6 months is an unreasonable estimate of how long it might take. That's reasonable.
A lot of people out there in the front offices, the Social Security offices, are also telling people 6 to 9 months because they've cut thousands of people. Because sometimes you can't even if you file online, that's one thing. Someone still has to look at it in the Social Security office, and whether your local Social Security office has employees, that's a whole different issue. But if you schedule an appointment, then you probably won't get an appointment for another month or two. So that usually adds to it,
Adds time.
unfortunately. One question that we get a lot is when they're filing for disability, people are filing for disability benefits, should they take all their medical records down to their appointment at the Social Security Administration?
No. No, and this is why. What Social Security needs to know is that the medical doctors, both physical and mental, that you've seen within the last 2 years. So if you know those doctors by name, they're going to request the records. Even if you submit those records, we have to request those records. So it's just extra work for you that's unnecessary. And the reason for that is you may leave something out. You may submit, a 70-page document that was originally in 170 pages. So we just, in order, and it's really to the claimant's benefit, you don't want to omit anything because you don't necessarily know what the most important part of that record is. So Social Security is going to request the record directly from the source, even if you bring those medical records. So the most important thing to have is who you saw and when you saw them.
Yeah, I've been telling people that for years. It's you don't need to submit your medical records. If you want to, then the Social Security employee will scan it in, send it up to the Disability Determination Service. But number one, don't wait. If you're going to file for disability, if you're unable to work because of a disability, don't say, well, once I get my medical records next month or the month after, then I'll go ahead and do it. No, you just lost a month. Just as the same thing. If you're going to be filing for divorce spouse benefits or something like that, or, oh, I'll wait till I got my divorce decree. No, schedule the appointment now because you might lose a month or two.
Yeah.
So it's
And I would just add
important
to that,
that you start the process.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, even if you don't have any medical records, if you feel like you're disabled, you feel like you can no longer work because of a condition, or you've stopped working because of a condition, but you haven't been to the doctor at all, go ahead and apply. Because Social Security is tasked with reviewing that disability. So I've reviewed hundreds, thousands of claims where they had no medical records. And those claims are allowed too, because we will get an exam to evaluate whatever the condition is that's being alleged.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for adding that, because we get a lot of people to say, well, I haven't been to the doctor for a while. And there's going to be a lot more people like that because of the Affordable Care Act. They're losing the subsidies. So millions of more people are going to be without health insurance, without health care. And they're going to say, yeah, I'd like to file for disability, but I've got no medical records. You do not need medical records. You file, you tell the Social Security employee what your issues are, why you can't work, where you worked before, all that stuff. And then the Social Security employee sends it up. And if you all determine that you obviously need medical records, then you do the consultative exam, the CE, right? Where you send the person to a Social Security contracted, not a Social Security, it's a private doctor, but it's someone that's contracted with Social Security or DDS, that is within that specialty, correct?
Correct. So if it's physical, it'll be a physical doctor. And if it's mental, it will be a psychiatrist or psychologist. Yes. And these doctors, this is another myth. So myth buster here. These doctors do not work for Social Security. These are independent doctors who have agreed to do a certain amount of exams for doctors, because for Social Security, I'm sorry, because oftentimes these doctors have their own patients. They do not just do exams for Social Security. So they do a certain amount of exams, and you may have it vary for some doctors who do more than others. So you may have, someone doctors in certain areas where they're the only doctor in that area. You have that in more rural areas. So you may have neighbors or friends who all saw the same doctor, and that may just be because that's the only doctor that's available within a certain mile radius, and not necessarily that that doctor works for Social Security, because none of them do.
Perfect.
And they do a standard exam. They do a standard physical exam. That physical exam does include certain things that Social Security needs to have to make a decision on certain things. So if you allege a back impairment, there needs to be range of motion and specific information about your back. Sometimes you may go to a doctor regularly and they don't include range of motion because they're the doctor you see all the time. So you may think, I go to the doctor all the time. Why is Social Security sending me to this exam? And it's for reasons like that. There is no range of motion. There is no, full exam of your spine, and that information is just missing because oftentimes you see your doctor, they refill your prescription, and they don't do all those specific things.
They're trying to make you better, not necessarily determine whether you can go back to work or anything like that. So that's, yeah. All right, we've got a question here, Kim. Did they really approve 3714, and for everyone who will get it? No, so that's just how much you get from Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI. There's difference. There's SSI and SSDI. Social Security Disability Insurance is what you paid into. If you paid into it for 10 years and you're currently insured, there's two different statuses there. But it really depends on your work record, how much you actually paid into Social Security. But yeah, if you paid into it max for 35 years and you are applying for disability, you could get close to over $4,000 nowadays as your high benefit amount. And if you are approved for disability benefits and you have children under the age of 18 or that became disabled before the age of 22, they can also get benefits on your record. So if you're receiving disability, they will get up to 50% of your full benefit amount. It's called the PIA, primary insurance amount. So they'll get up to 50%. And then if you have a spouse that's taking care of those children, particularly a child under the age of 16 or one that became disabled before the age of 22, the spouse can also get benefits on your record as well. There's a family max. There's a maximum that could be paid out to a family on somebody's disability or retirement, or even someone that's deceased. So there is a limit there, but it really depends on how much you actually paid into the system. And that's not what Tara G does. That's when Social Security takes the disability claim, make sure everything is all the package is done there correctly, everything is included, make sure the person is insured, make sure they're currently insured. That's two different things. And then they send it up to DDS, and DDS does all their stuff. And then when DDS, the Disability Determination Services, sends it back, that's when the Social Security employee that runs the numbers and starts to determine, how much are you going to get? Is there children? Do we need to reach out and take an application for the child and all the rest of it? So,
yeah. The DDS, or the Disability Determination Service, is responsible for the medical portion of the claim. They make the medical decision on the claim.
The title of the video says "Secret Tricks." Why would we want to trick the government and not be on? No, it's just there are just certain things in there that, like, don't sit around here. Here's a trick. You're not tricking the government. There are just certain tips, tricks, and secrets that people lose money every single day because they don't know about it. Well, I'm not going to file for disability benefits because I don't have any medical records. A lot of people are eligible for disability benefits, but they are not filing because, I'm too young. I don't have any medical records. I don't have my medical records. I guess I'll wait a couple of months. You just might have lost 2 months. I'm not insured on my own record. If you were married to someone that has passed away, you can file for what's called disabled widows benefits between the ages of 50 and 59. You've got children that can file. Remember, I said that it's called disabled adult child, DAC benefits. So if you have a child that became disabled before the age of 22, they can file for benefits on a parent's record if that parent is receiving retirement benefits, disability benefits, or is deceased. So those are the secret tricks, tips, secrets that too many people, and this is money that they paid into. When you paid FICA tax, all those decades, you paid for it to replace a portion of your income when you retire at 62, 67, 70, or whatever the case may be. But in the unfortunate case that you become disabled and are unable to work because of it, that's what you paid into it. So, and it's different than SSI. We might have some SSI questions we'll get into, but let's see, going through the questions.
CDR question about whether or not you would be, are there more CDRs after age 62? And what I'll say about CDRs is when the determination division makes a decision on whether or not you are disabled, there is a time frame associated with that decision, how long that disability may keep you from working. That could be 3 years, that could be 7 years, or longer. If you are up in age, it is more than likely that you will get a longer, what is called internally, diary. And because you get that longer time frame, you will more than likely not come up for CDR at age 62 because you will fall outside of that time frame. So for CDRs, to answer your question, once you get older, it's unlikely.
Okay. And Tarji and I are on the exact same page. I don't think she knows my acronym, but FCF. Continuing disability reviews. If you're currently receiving Social Security disability benefits, don't worry about CDRs. Don't worry about it. Social Security does a phenomenally excellent job at stressing people out about CDR. Don't worry about CDRs. Be prepared, make little notes of that, go to the doctor and, follows doctor's orders. If you disagree with your doctor, make sure you document, why. Okay, yeah, I understand, doctor, I should take this medicine, but it makes me 10 times worse in this particular situation. Just have conversations with your doctors. And that way, if you ever get a CDR, continuing disability review, you're not stressing it. You get it in the mail, then complete it, make copies, and then send it in and forget about it again, because there are quotas. And I've talked to other people that work in the Social Security office, and they've increased the quotas for this year and going forward. Here's how it works. In, let's say, my office, we had to do 100 a month. So we had to do 100 a month. If you have to do 100 a month, you have to do 100 a month. If you're one short or one over, I get called on the carpet, as we used to say in the Marine Corps. So I get in trouble if we do one less or one more. So in order to make sure we're at exactly 100, our office and every office in the country sends out like 200 of these packets to make sure they get 100. So if you get a packet and you fill it out and you stress it and you return it, forget about it, because you might be part of that second 100 and they're not going to do anything. They'll sit on it for a little while, and then the next month, if there's don't need to be sent up, they won't send it up, and you're stressed. Oh my gosh, am I going to be denied? Or are they going to kick me off? Oh my God. Don't worry about it. Fill it out the best you can, make copies, send it up, and then forget about it again. Don't stress out. Too many people are making themselves worse by stressing out about CDRs. Do you agree?
I agree.
Yeah. So let's see. Schizophrenic and on SSDI, I have been for 10 years. Always keep up with CDRs and with my representative payee, but always worry Social Security will frown upon mental illness as a disability. No. Yeah. So, and representative payee, if you're unable to take care of your own benefits, then that's what they call the representative payee. You can assign, or a doctor, someone can, say, hey, this person is unable to take care of their own benefits, their children, they have a disability that prevents them from taking care of their own benefits, and we need to assign a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, a friend to be the representative payee for that person. And that person is ultimately responsible to make sure those benefits go for that person's welfare. Generally, they will receive what's called a representative payee report once a year. Usually comes in the first part of the year, and they said, hey, last year we sent you, the representative payee, $24,000 for Eric's best interests. What did you do with that $24,000? And you just put down there, paid the rent, gave him money for food, paid his health care, his da-da-da, and that's pretty much it. So representative payee is an important thing that a lot of people don't realize. They think, a power of attorney. Social Security doesn't really recognize a power of attorney. So
no, they don't. They do not. I saw a question in the chat about an individual who applied for benefits recently, and he lives in Florida, and his claim was sent to New York. And you may have discussed this before, Dr. Weir, so let me know. But Social Security recently, earlier this year, made a change where field offices can handle claims for any field office. Have you discussed that now that they've opened it up to all field offices? So
yes.
Okay. So yeah,
but yeah, go for it.
Well, the work that he mentioned earlier that they do on the front end when they take the application, that may be done. So if he applied in Florida, a field office in New York may be working through that application information. But once it gets forwarded to the DDS for a decision, it will go to the Florida DDS because the medical decision has to be made by the state that you live in.
Yes, funny you should say that because I've been saying for over I think over 2,000 videos we've got done here. I tell people, they say, well, I call my local office and I can't get in. I say, well, here's what you do. The trick is any office in the country is your office. If you have an issue, if you have a pending issue that is being taken care of in a local office and they have all the documentation there, then you probably it's probably a good idea to talk to the local office. But if you have any other question, any other issue, every office in the country, 1,200 plus offices in the country are your office. They're going to probably harass you a little bit and say, you're not our office. And then my response is, does it say Social Security Administration on the outside of the building? Yes. Well, then you are my office. Do what I want you to do. Yes. Yeah. So any office in the country, because there's offices that, like my office, third business in the country, and other offices, we used to get employees from other offices, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so crazy here in my other office. Yeah, our people, we picked up the phones pretty quickly and we were able to do this pretty quickly. There needs to be more workload mobility in Social Security, and hopefully they're doing something about that. Bella, who always reminds us about compassionate allowance listings. She is very good at reminding us, one of our awesome regular viewers here. So tell us about compassionate allowance. What exactly is that?
The compassionate allowance is a certain medical conditions have been deemed so severe that and it sounds very harsh, but the definition of disability is a condition that will keep you from working for this foreseeable future or result in death. And a lot of the compassionate allowance conditions are those that are deemed so severe that they may result in early demise.
Yeah, your disability has to last 12 months or longer, or end in death. And that's another thing about Social Security. The lawyers use this stat a lot. They say 60, 70, 80% of disability claims are denied, so you need to pay us, and so we can help you and stuff. Because we have a 80%, 90%, 100% approval rating. Well, they're playing with a few numbers. Some people are denied Social Security disability because they're not insured. They didn't pay into Social Security, or they're not currently insured, which is another process. Or I've taken many claims from people that are pregnant. And pregnancy in every state, except for I think Florida, does not last 9 months or longer. But they want to file, they demand to file. And so we had to take applications from people with broken arms, and it said, yeah, but we have to take the application, and then we deny it because the disability doesn't last 12 months or longer. So lawyers like to use that. Allegedly, I always avoid, I always be touchy when I'm talking about lawyers. Allegedly, this is what they do. Anyway, and then they say, but if you use our firm, we get a 100% approval rate or something. That's because a lot of law firms out there are selective. You call them up and say, hey, I want to file for disability benefits. They'll ask you a few questions. And then if it looks like you're a winner, because they don't get paid unless you win, then they'll take you on. But if you say, oh yeah, this, and oh yeah, no, I can't help you. You didn't look like you're going to win. So they're not going to take your case. So that's why they get a really, really great, awesome approval rate, because they're kind of selective. In light of that, that's one of the reasons we bought Tara J in, is we put a team together. So you can go onto our website, mygovexpert.com, and click on talk to a former Social Security insider. And there she is right there. You can set up an appointment to file for disability. We're also we're gonna be setting up shorter appointments as well, like a 30-minute. These are the only thing that we charge for on anything. If you call Chapter Medicare, they help you find a Medicare plan for free. They don't charge you anything like every other place out there. They don't charge you. They better not. Nobody better be charging you to help you find a Medicare plan. And then our websites are free. These videos are free. We've got 2,000 videos out there to help you with all things Social Security, retirement, disability, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, all the rest of it. But the only thing we do charge for are these one-on-one times, and that supports all the other free information. So if you want to set up an appointment with her, you can go either to mygovexpert.com, where we've got all the information on disability and retirement. Click on the Talk to a Former Insider, or to our group discussion website, 24help.org, and click on Talk to Experts, and it'll take you to the same place, and you can schedule an appointment with her. All right, let's see. Thanks so much for your work, Dr. Ed. I checked my earnings record, and for 2023 and 2024, it says not yet recorded in this and Medicare columns. Yeah, so that's most important thing, is you're checking your work record to make sure it's complete. And for 2024, yeah, that it should have already been recorded for 2024. So if you filed your taxes and everything for those years, and you paid into Social Security, FICA comes in two parts. FICA is Social Security and Medicare. If for some reason it's not showing up there, then you need to take your W-2 down to Social Security and get it fixed. And let me break off and tell you currently insured. So in order to be eligible for SSDI, you had to pay into the system normally for 10 years. If you're younger, it's different, but normally 10 years, 40 quarters. But you also need to be currently insured. Currently insured is you had to pay into the system 5 out of the last 10 years, 5 out of the last 10 years before you became disabled. And what the idea there is, the example I always get, if you're in your 30s, and you work for 10 years, you paid into Social Security, so you're insured for Social Security, no problem. And then let's say you take off for 20 years and travel the world and vacation and stuff, and all of a sudden, you get disabled cliff diving in Acapulco, and you come in and I want to file for disability. I'm no longer able to work. You haven't been working for 20 years, so you're not currently insured. So there are two different insured statuses. So a lot of people don't understand the difference between those. So. See any other questions you'd like to attack here?
I saw a question. I was going to add to your example, though, that if that situation were to happen, that you still have the opportunity to apply for SSI benefits if you come back and you're disabled. So the two different titles but again, people do get confused with insured status, because they think, they've worked and they, should be insured. A lot of people don't understand also that insured status expires. It's not a status that lasts forever. But if the insured status expires, or you are no longer insured, you do have the opportunity to still apply for disability under SSI.
Okay. So, do you want to go with the difference between SSI and SSDI for new viewers out there?
I will. So SSI, the difference between, there are two different titles. One is a need-based program, and that's SSI, and SSDI is where you have worked, earned credits, and become insured for Social Security. So that's the difference between those. It's Title 16 is need-based, that's SSI, and Title 2 is insured, and you paid into it. So.
And the max, and people can receive both. So if your SSDI, what you paid into it is really, really low, let's say and you get approved and you get $500 a month. So you're getting $500 from SSDI. And if you're low income, low resources, and you're eligible for SSI, supplemental security income, you can get this year up to $967. So you essentially get $500 for one, and then kind of the remainder up to $967 on the other one. For next year, SSI is $994. And once you're approved for SSI, you're what's called categorically approved for Medicaid or Medi-Cal or Access, whatever they call it in your particular state. For Medicaid, for help with, healthcare. But that's a whole different animal based on the one big beautiful bill. They're cutting about $1 trillion out of Medicaid. So a lot of people are going to get kicked off even if they're eligible. And so we're keeping an eye on that for everybody. Question here, Mary, does everyone have to fill out the form 3373 during CDR? I've had to do it before, but I always have to do it. I'm totally blind.
There is different criteria for blind. Were you going to answer that question? You want me to take it?
No, you go for it. That's in your wheelhouse there.
There is different criteria for the blind. The first part of the question, yes, everybody does have to complete the 3373. The function report is used to evaluate function. So if your function has changed over the years, that's going to be evident when you complete that 3373. Even if considering that you're blind, there are certain ticklers in the system that lets them know that you're blind. So if you do not complete and return that form, it won't be held against you because it's going to be evident in the file that you're blind. If it's a case of someone that is completely blind, it's not something that would be held against you. But for any other case, mental, physical cases, completing the 3373 or the third party function report are important factors in evaluating your function and determining whether or not you continue to be disabled. So blind criteria is a lot more straightforward.
Yeah. But there's you've got totally blind, visually impaired. There's certain levels of blindness which Social Security would consider you disabled, correct?
Correct. So really there are different reasons for blindness is what I'll say. There are different reasons for blindness. So, and what I mean by that is there is, like, people always refer to legally blind. With legally blind is 2,200. Social Security is not deeming you disabled because you're legally blind. I'm actually legally blind, but you can be corrected beyond that point. So Social Security uses your best corrected vision to determine whether or not you meet the blind criteria. So if your best corrected vision is not beyond 2,200, then that meets the blindness threshold. There are other factors that are included in that because different conditions cause tunnel vision. So field of vision is included in the blindness criteria. Some people have really restricted fields of vision, and that will also play into, that's not visual acuity, but that field of vision is also taken into consideration with the blindness criteria. So the threshold is beyond 2,200 though.
Okay. The reason I chuckled there for a second is when you said tickle, and I haven't heard that term in a while. That's one of those inside Social Security. It's kind of just we call it a tickle. It's a to-do list that you're setting up. Oh, I'll set up a tickle date for that. That means, okay, in a month, I have to remind myself to, reach out for this person for their document or whatever. So yeah. So I haven't heard that term in a few years. So
Yeah, so that it's going to be evident though that a person is visually impaired. So certain things, like if a function report is not returned, that on a CDR claim for visually impaired person, that is not going to be something that negatively impacts the outcome.
Okay. Someone said, "Oh, we just need to get these undocumented immigrants off of Social Security." And I did a video about this yesterday. So we won't discuss that. Yeah. So people just
Well, just coming from a determination office, I will just add to whatever you said in your video. I have not processed one claim for an undocumented immigrant, not one.
yeah. Because if you did, that means the person at the Social Security office messed up because we used to get
Big time.
undocumented immigrants coming all the time and trying to file for whatever. We said, okay, all right, what do you need? Retirement benefits? Okay, no problem. Let's see your certificate of naturalization or your green card. And they show green card and it looks suspicious. We have to run it through the SAVE system and doesn't come back. You need to get legal status in order to get retirement benefits, disability benefits. So luckily, the Social Security office, wherever all the places you worked, they did the right thing and they stopped that and they never send it up to you. So that's
Yeah,
good.
so
Yeah.
it's never
So that's
happened.
another. Yeah, that's another thing politicians use to distract us while the trust fund runs out, so they can eventually privatize it. But we won't go there. This is awesome. Tweety Bird, regular. My friend filed for disability in 2020, was denied. He had epilepsy. Hasn't worked since like 5 years. If he tried again to revive that claim, would he be denied? No work credit for 5 years.
So there is no necessarily reviving the claim, and disability has a lot of factors. So there's a lot of gray area. So that I won't say flat out that that claim can't be revived. That wouldn't be the official term, but I'll put a pin there and go forward in what will he be denied if he applies again. I would say apply again because there is no, depending on how his condition has progressed, how often he has seizures. Seizures is a condition that is evaluated based on very specific criteria. So whether or not he's having seizures at a certain level or a certain frequency, I'm sorry, not level, but at a certain frequency, whether or not he is being treated medically for those seizures, are all factors that are taken into consideration with seizures. What I will say about the previous claim is if he, speaking to the revive, if he applies again and his current claim is reviewed and he meets the criteria for disability, and they look at that prior file and see that he met the criteria, then that claim could be reopened. If he has depending on the type of claim that it was, because it has been 5 years. But ultimately apply again, that reapply and just have him evaluated, because it depends on where he is with his condition now and all of the factors that I said. So I would just say apply again.
And as you point out, that hasn't worked in 5 years, so maybe not SSDI because you're not currently insured. But again, don't do those calculations yourself. The Social Security system, it does the calculations for what's called the DLI, the date last insured. So don't think, oh, okay, I haven't worked for 5 years. There's a lot of variables there, so apply. And number two is, even if he's not eligible for SSDI because of insured status or whatever the case may be, as Tarjay points out, SSI, supplemental security income. But again, that's a needs-based program, low income, low resources. Republic's girl. So my friend who just got disability and has now recently taken 50-50 custody of minor children should let SSDI office know. Number one, Republic's girl, thank you so much. You're so awesome for taking care of your friend there. This is what we do in our community here. We, listen to all this stuff for ourselves. But we also go out there and see who we can help. So thank you. You're our superhero of the day. Absolutely. Step children can receive benefits from a step parent, but they just have to prove half support. The 50-50 custody, that's a kind of a, if that person pays half support for those children, and the children are under the age of 18 or became disabled before the age of 22, absolutely. So that one's a little bit of a difficult case. So I would say file. So, and so you're basically filing for, it's called an auxiliary child. So I guess it's children, you say. So yeah, I would definitely file. Absolutely. Your work is number one approved. Your benefits SSI goes with your work progress. Show your work 45 years, 100% proof. Okay. Not sure where that's going.
Me
All
either.
right. Yeah. Waiting to see disabilities. Dr. People were laughing, running in and out to get their cigarette break. I thought there's nothing going wrong with that. Waiting to see disabilities, doctor. Yeah, that's, we talk about this all the time in this channel, that there is fraud, waste, and abuse in Social Security. There's fraud, waste, and abuse. If the government really wants to find a whole bunch of money, then they need to go to the Department of Defense. That's where that's where a lot of money is being siphoned out. They haven't passed an audit in what, 8 to 10 years, except for the Marine Corps. So old Marine Corps sergeant, we passed the last audit, but everybody else. But yeah, there is fraud, waste, and abuse in Social Security. And with all of the cuts to local Social Security offices, it's very difficult for them to go after that fraud, waste, and abuse. That's the front line. Those are the people, you call. How they do it is you call them up and say, yeah, I've got a neighbor that is receiving disability benefits and they're working. But as I said, be careful, because you don't want to waste, cause issues for your neighbor, and because people are allowed to work. There's the trial work period where you can make $1 billion a month for 9 months to see if you're able to work. And if someone's making $1 billion a month in 9 months, then obviously they're going to, stop their disability benefits. But you are allowed to work and collect Social Security benefits. After that 9 months, you have to stay under what's called the substantial gainful activity. And this year it's $1,620. And next year it's gone up to $1,690. So if you're going to drop the proverbial dime on someone, that is your responsibility to go out there and, prevent fraud, waste, and abuse, but just keep that into consideration. So if you hire an attorney to assist your SSDI case, does the Social Security pay the attorney directly after calculating your back pay? And if so, does the attorney have to submit an itemized accounting of the work? You want to handle that, or you want me to?
Sure, I'll handle it. Yes, Social Security pays the attorney directly from your back pay. And no, the attorney does not have to submit an itemized accounting of their work.
This year it's what, 9,200. They raised it up to 9,200, right?
For the max, yeah.
Yeah. 25% of the back pay up to $9,200.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think they can ask, sometimes they ask the judge for some extenuating circumstances to get a little bit extra for, so, but normally it's 9,200. And if you used a lawyer to get approved, then if, let's say, usually I always recommend the first couple of levels, do it yourself, call Tarji and get an appointment with her and she'll help you through it. But, do it yourself, go to Social Security, whatever the case may be. The first 2 levels are, easier. The administrative law judge, the 3rd appeal level, that's when you really need a lawyer. And I always recommend kind of local lawyers that kind of know the local judges. But over the last little while, this is another question I get, that sometimes people, they file in one state and then they get contacted from a completely different state for documents and stuff. So I guess there's some type of workload mobility going on behind the scenes, right?
For filing their, or are you talking about when they go into a Social Security office and file?
Correct.
Or with the, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
with the ALJ, right?
yeah, yeah.
Because I think the administrative law judges, that third level, they're what, average 300 days, 350 days?
It's long for how long it's
Yes.
taken them to get scheduled.
Yeah.
It's
It's
long. I mean, most recently I looked at a site and they were scheduling about 6 months out. So it takes it can take some time once you're at that level, once your claim reaches that level.
Susanna asked, what is the limit as to how far back you can claim that you were disabled? Good question.
Yeah, good question. And as far as calculating the money, that would be your wheelhouse and not mine. But as far as the disability goes, there is no limit to how far back you can say that you were disabled. If you were no longer working and you had a disabling condition that you could say your condition was disabling 7 years ago. Whether or not you will receive back pay for 7 years is a different determination of whether or not you were disabled. So Social Security could make a finding of fact that you were disabled 7 years ago. And then, or the determination office will make a decision that you were disabled 7 years ago. And that will go back to the field office for them to calculate how far back payments will go. And you can address timeframes. Do you want to address timeframes or you want
Usually
to
it's about a year, but there's so many exceptions and variables based on protective filing and whether you're in appeal
yeah,
status, whether there's,
yeah,
whether the Social Security made a mistake there. But generally, I mean, one rule is kind of a year
1 year.
prior to when you, file for the disability, when you, or become disabled and when you
But
file. So yeah,
yeah,
you just put, if you became disabled 5 years ago, you tell, because there's there's the alleged onset date, the potential onset date, and the established onset date. So you've got three
mhm,
different dates there that, Social Security employees often mess up themselves, the difference between the AOD and the POD and the EOD. But that's just behind the scenes sausage being made. Just
and
tell the person when you became disabled, unable to
yeah,
work because of your disability.
yeah, and all of the everything else will be figured out behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's typically 1 year, but there are so many variables. If you filed another claim, your protective filing date, they may be able to go further than that 1 year, depending on those factors. So it just file the claim. It
Yep,
just goes
exactly. And
file.
then, and then be upfront. There's people that go in there and they try to be tough and try not to show emotion. And I'm especially when you go to the consultative exam and you're going to see the Social Security contracted doctor, and oh, I've got a really good day today, so I'm going to go out there and rule the world and stuff. And be honest,
Absolutely.
what you're dealing with. Yeah. So, will a physical residual functional capacity summary of findings? Wow, I got that all out. Work for CDR says client is unable to work.
Um, I'm understanding this question to mean if you submit that and it says that you're unable to work, will that work for a CDR? And everything is taken into consideration in a disability claim. Now, will it work for a CDR as far as that's going to be enough to make a decision of whether or not someone has regained the ability to work? No, because there is a process that claims have to go through. And the determination office wouldn't be able to get a form and say, this is enough to decide that the person can no longer work. It is an evidentiary review. So that's going to happen. And if that residual functional capacity or RFC plays into it or further supports the fact that the person can't work, it will be taken into consideration, but not solely.
Yeah, and there's some people that say, well, my doctor says I'm disabled, and I'm not sure why Social Security second guesses my doctor. They know I'm disabled, so I guess I can just file for disability. Or people get a lot of vets that are receiving VA disability 10, 20, 30%. And it says, well, the VA says I'm disabled, so I guess I can automatically be approved for Social Security disability.
I'm glad you
And
mentioned
those, yeah, go for it.
Well, go ahead. You were going to say in those. I'll just piggyback.
No, go for it. Yeah. So, I mean, they're, yeah, I'll let you go for it. You're our guest.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because we got that a lot. Even people who are 100% disabled with the VA. So the difference between two things. First, doctors are basing your disability on a medical standard for the medical community. Social Security's review of disability is a vocational, it includes a vocational evaluation. So it's how severe your condition is, yes, but the limitations that severe condition is causing you that prevent you from working. So first, it's a review of the severity, and then it's a review of the functional limitations, and then that is the kind of third review, or the consideration that Social Security does, is the vocational criteria. What type of work did you do? What type of work might you can be able to continue to do in spite of your impairment and the limitations that are related to it? So that's that. There are often people who ask, well, can my doctor write a letter that says, I'm disabled, and I'll get this letter from my doctor? That's fine. That is something that Social Security takes into consideration, medical source statements, but the objective evidence has to support that medical source statement. So if your doctor writes a medical statement that says, my patient can't walk for, can't stand for 2 hours a day, there is going to have to be objective evidence that support that you can't stand for 2 hours a day. So it's kind of a review of the total evidence, and not just one or two, magic words or special documents in there that are going to result in you being approved for disability. Now, as far as being approved for the VA, like I explained, Social Security uses a more in-depth review process, and I am not well versed on the VA, so I'm not, I've reviewed VA decisions, and I see that the VA gives percentages for certain things that are a standard percentage. So I've seen maybe, and I don't know the percentages, so don't hold me to it, but I've reviewed VA medical records, and I see that you may have carpal tunnel, and for that you get 10%. And I've reviewed enough claims to know that everybody who has carpal tunnel may get that 10% based on the diagnoses. Social Security doesn't make any decisions based on the diagnoses alone. So you have to have the diagnosis along with the objective findings so that they can evaluate how you are impacted by that diagnosis, which is why you may have two people with the same diagnosis, and one walks away with a allowance decision, then the other one walks away denied, because they're both impacted by those impairments differently. So that's the difference between the VA and Social Security. So if you are 100% permanent and total with the VA, that does not automatically mean you'll be allowed with Social Security.
All right. Yeah, we had in my office, we had a lot of vets in our office receiving 10, 20, 30, 40, 60% disability benefits from the VA, but for Social Security, none of them were disabled because they were currently working. So that's kind of the difference. So yeah, I think the Republic's girl, same thing about that. Her friend with disability getting the also has 2 minor children now, close to 62. A lot of people make that mistake. They're receiving disability benefits and they say, well, now I'm 62 years old, so I can go ahead and file for retirement benefits and get retirement benefits on top of my disability. No. If you are eligible for spouse benefits, divorce spouse benefits, surviving spouse benefits, independently entitled divorce spouse benefits, then if you're eligible for those benefits and if it's over your disability amount, yes, you can get benefits above that. One offsets the other. But retirement on your own record, no. If you want to switch to retirement on your own record, you essentially have to get off disability and then file for retirement benefits and take a 30% cut. And so, yeah, nobody does that unless they want to go back to work and, tired of receiving disability in the CDRs or something. So that's not anything really people do. Yeah. So let's see here. And then people are having a hard time reaching out to Chapter Medicare. We've only got a few more days in the annual enrollment period. It ends December 7th. They've been crazy busy the entire time. People want help from Chapter because they want the help throughout the year. So if you need help, give them one more call early in the morning or late at night. They're open 7 days a week. And if you don't get through, email me at ed@mygovexpert.com and I'll reach out to them. Make sure you include your phone number because they can't call you back unless they confirm that you called them first. A lot of Medicare agents out there just harass you. They're not supposed to. So, all right, let's see. Remember, CDRs are going to be happening more often with this administration and the Big Beautiful Project 2025. CDRs will be appearing more often. Be prepared, everyone in SSDI. Yes, be prepared, but don't stress it. Even before you get it, don't stress it until you actually get it in the mail. And then once you do the right thing and stop stressing again. All right, let me get some new. Do you see any other questions? We're at our hour, but if you've got any other questions you want to answer there.
Well, the last question, it went away. It was the only part of it that I saw was, how does disability work with a minor child? So I don't know if there was a different part. Did you see that question?
That's a question. Republic said we've answered that one a few times. So
okay.
Yeah. I will be 66 and 10 months in February 2026. Do you think I will receive a CDR between now and then? What do you think?
I would say no.
Yeah.
I would say no.
Yeah.
I would say no.
Yeah.
I think
even if you do, you probably have your trial work period, and so yeah.
Yeah, and if that came up for a CDR, I don't think that it would be one that would be pursued because it's because of age.
Good. Yeah, good point. You might receive a CDR if it's your time, but that's probably because the person sending out these hundreds of packets, just didn't, they're just making sure they fill their quota. And so they print off 200 packages and then they mail them out. And then you do it and they send it back and they look at it and it says, oh my gosh, this person is going to be 66 and 10 months in a few months. Shred. So you might get it because the computer system kicks it out, but yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. So, all right, let's see here. Bella, I received a CDR 2 years in a row. This administration has triggered the system. If so, fill it out, make copies and mail it in. Wow, 2 years in a row.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's yeah. All right. I think we got through all the questions. I really do appreciate you joining us. Hopefully we can have you back again. And remember, you can talk to her personally. Go into 24help.org, click on the little talk to experts down there, and there she is. Or you can go onto our other website and mygovexpert.com and click on talk to a Social Security Insider, and there she is again. And then we're going to be adjusting this to make a shorter appointment too. That's so we'll make that fix and make it so. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right. Hey, you take care of yourself. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time. And everybody else, please take care of yourselves and everybody around you. Bye-bye.
Bye.